Well, good evening. Welcome to Project Healing Waters Omaha's Fly Tying Thursday. I'm John Wright, and I will be tying one or maybe two flies this evening. The first one is one that was introduced by Jason Klaus over at Tenkara USA. It's called the Japanese Lantern, and it is a Tenkara fly. The other one is, I think, my original invention. I tied it the first time at the Society of American Military Engineers Industry Day convention back about a month ago. It's called the Royal Kaberi, and it is a Japanese version of the Royal Coachman. But here's what we're going to tie them with. I think you'll recognize just about everything. The hackle will be Hungarian partridge. The thread I'm going to use, 210 denier for both of them, red for the Coachman, white for the lantern, the lighted Japanese lantern lighted. The Japanese lantern also uses these right here. Those are check beads, and for a size 10, I use a 8/0 bead. Now, these come in all different sizes, and if you go to a fly shop to buy them, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg. But if you go down to Michael's or Hobby Lobby, you can get them in the jewelry section for like $2 for a tube that size right there. The lighted, of course, the Royal Kaberi will also use peacock herl. So let's go ahead and tie the Japanese lantern first. Grab my stuff here. Okay, switch cameras.
Progress.
Okay, here we go. Getting some echo someplace. Is that from me?
That was from me. I fixed it.
Okay. Yeah, I see it got you in twice.
Yep, I'm going to come off of my phone so I can watch it bigger.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
You might want to refocus again, John. You're just slightly out of focus.
It did, didn't it? Yep. Thank you. There we go.
Looking good.
Now here's my hackle that I'm going to use. And because this is that McCaw's camera with the extender on it, and this is as far back as I can get. So, and unfortunately, oh yeah, I do too. I can use this one here. I'm going to move over to my materials camera. Let's see, can you? Yeah, okay, that'll work. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to stroke these feathers back. I'll hold on to this tip section. Right, like so. Oh, let me, yeah, there we go. There we go. And I'm going to strip it back. Like so. So I've got, you can see just a little tiny stem there. Yeah, you can't see it. I'm sorry, it's out of focus. I'm going to clip that off just a little bit. Clip those barbules off, so I've just got a little bit of hackle stem showing, and I'll show you why here in just a second. What I'm going to try to do is slip the stem underneath that bead. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Probably not. Nope, it won't work. Okay. So we'll just go ahead and tie this in. This is a very, very simple fly to tie. The hardest part is this part right here. And bring this, bring this thread behind the hackle like so. And I'll get my hackle pliers. And this is the hardest part of this fly or any of the Tenkara flies, is trying to get these, for some reason, and I'm not sure why, This partridge seems awfully delicate. Tie that off. Now I'm going to stroke these forward and do a little tie in here to keep them forward. There we go. All right, now I'm just going to wrap backwards. And I'm just going to I'm going to unravel my thread. I want a nice smooth body. So I'm going to unravel this 210 denier so I get a nice smooth body out of it. And I'm going to try and build it up just a little bit, not too much. And I want just a little bit of a taper, not a whole lot. Okay. That looks pretty good. And now I'm going to cord it. I'm going to leave it set there. Okay. Does that look a little out of focus, or is it my imagination?
It looks pretty good, John.
Hey, Bill, welcome. There we go. Oh. There we go. That's a little better. Okay. Recognize this, Al?
Yes, I do.
You know, that little fly I sent you that I showed, you know, like the experiment stuff, you know, with the bead head. That's what I did. I used that little trick.
Yeah. Al showed us this 2 weeks ago, I think it was. You just color the thread, and that gives you a really nice contrasting body.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
As
the
I
last thing-
recall, it was a suggestion from Fred Dupre.
Fred Dupre. Yeah, I think you're right, Al. Okay, now all I have to do is find my whip finish tool around here. There it is. And we'll finish this thing off, and that is a Japanese lantern lighted.
I missed the start of this. I apologize. So that's just hackle, right, John? Brought
That's
forward.
it. Yeah, partridge hackle.
Partridge hackle? Okay.
Yep, Hungarian partridge. And that is a Japanese lantern lighted.
Cool.
And like I say, the hardest part of this fly is this working with this partridge, and it looks like I got an errant fiber here, so I'll just clip that off. Not that I think it'll make any difference to the fish, but it does to the fisherman. So, and of course, it's a soft hackle fly, so it is fished wet. And I know some people will put 20 thousandths or 15 thousandths, a couple of wraps of lead just behind that white head, or the bead head, and do it that way to get it down. But I haven't found any issue or time when I needed that. So,
John, the term lighted, is that because it's of color, or because of the bead, or what's the significance of lighted?
yeah, it's because of the color. There's two versions of that Jason ties. One is the Japanese lantern lighted, and that's white with a black body or black thread, black ribbing. And the other one is the unlit, and that's black with white ribbing.
Okay.
The one I caught the trout on down at Bennett Spring was black, was the unlighted version.
Okay.
Now, Jason, when he ties his, he uses 2 beads up front. I just used 1. I like using beads, and I'll tell you why, especially these glass beads. They don't have a whole lot of weight to them, so they don't force the fly to come down by the head like a tungsten bead or something like that would. So they're almost a neutral buoyant kind of thing, so that they don't inadvertently affect the action of the fly. About the only thing I use glass beads on now is this fly, and then I use regular brass beads on copper johns and prince nymphs and things like that, because I need to get them down, and I think getting them down by the head first kind of attracts the fish a little bit. I'm not sure why, other than the fact that that's the way insects dive, is head first. So
I like the looks of these. I like the North Country spiders, the older English flies, the
Yeah.
partridge in orange, all those kind of things. And of course, those are very similar, but the hackle is swept back instead of forward.
yeah,
These could be fished the same way. I used to like fishing those spider flies as like, kind of a dry dropper kind of thing, only instead of sinking something that's heavier, it was actually just, kind of floating in the surface film or just under
yeah.
with that soft hackle fly. So
When I first started tying flies, we didn't know about things called nymphs. There was only 3 kinds of flies that we tied back in those days. Dry flies, of course, which were the prince of the king of the tires in those days. Everybody fished dry flies, and if you couldn't catch it on a dry fly, you didn't catch fish. There was also what the English referred to as wet flies. And I know Al remembers it, and you probably do too, Mike, and I know Paul does. The wet flies were fished subsurface. And my favorite wet fly was a lead-wing coachman, which was tied with a mallard feather, a mallard flank feather, and it had a gray wing. So it was a beautiful fly. Yeah, Al's gives us a thumbs up on that one. I haven't tied one in a long time, but I will have to do that again someday. But that and the married wing flies, I think, are just amazing flies, and they don't get used very much anymore. And I think that's probably a mistake on our part as fishermen. We ought to be giving those old-fashioned wet flies as much of a chance of catching fish as we do our modern day nymphs and things. The other fly pattern, of course, we've had for years have been streamers.
I always liked tying, traditional style flies, but I'll say, the dry flies that I first started tying were the blue dun, blue wing olive, royal coachman, black gnat, but it was all with the quill wing dry flies.
Yeah.
Using mallards, slips of mallard wings for the
Yeah.
wings. Well, they look beautiful and they're
Yeah.
fun to tie once you get the hang of it. But one fish and they're completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Those wings just don't hold up for anything. So it's really fun to tie them, and the same with the wet flies. You can do a married wing wet fly. You catch one fish and it's completely destroyed.
It's shot. Yeah.
It just takes that quill wing and just scatters all of those barbules, and it's just, I mean, it'll still fish, but it doesn't look like a postcard anymore. It doesn't look like
Yeah, and that's the reason I don't fish them anymore, because they're not very durable. So, but when a dry fly, and yeah, I started with actually the first dry I ever used, I didn't even tie. I bought it because I didn't know how to tie dry flies back in those days. I'm talking the early 70s. And I was telling Al, the first trout that I caught on the fly, the first fish ever that I caught on the fly, was back about 1974 or 73 in the Black River outside the back gate of Griffiths Air Force Base, New York. And I caught him on about a size 10 or a 12 quill body mosquito. And I can remember that fish to this day, and it was a brown, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a brown. But yeah, I saw him rising, and I cast that mosquito over the top of him about 17 times. Then all of a sudden, on the 18th time, he decided he'd had enough of it. He took it. So, most exciting fish I've ever caught. But yeah, I like the older patterns. But you're right; they don't.
Like the Adams and the mosquito that I tied had the hackle tip wings.
Yeah,
grizzly hackle tip wings.
Yeah.
Those are okay. But you can really go through a heck of a lot of hackle pretty fast doing those hackle tip wings. I really am surprised that the Wonder Wing concept hasn't taken hold any more than it has. And I think the reason might be that a lot of people probably tied them wrong. By wrong, I mean with the stem tied down,
Uh-huh.
you know, and so then they had trouble with it, twisting their leaders and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, if everybody would just watch Al's video and see how you do it to not
Yep.
have the leader get twisted, you know, I think that right there is something that it could be that answer to you know, pretty looking dry flies with a wing that will hold up. I mean, there really isn't anything out there other than, you know, some hair wing flies that'll hold up to a poly, I suppose. You know, a lot of the parachutes, that's the rage of today is parachutes, but
Yeah. I've thought that tying like a Royal Coachman with the Wonder Wings or the Welly Wings is the other. They're both kind of the same. Would be an ideal solution to that problem too. So I just haven't had a chance to sit down and do any of them. Okay, let's go on with my second tie. Not like we don't have enough time. This one is going to be a little bit different. Oops. Yeah, that's right. Okay, for this one, again, I'm going to use the same partridge for the hackle, but I'm going to use red thread.
John, before you get started,
Yeah.
Traditionally the Tenkara flies, is it pretty much standard dry fly hooks or wet fly hooks? What do they normally use for?
You know,
like traditionally old school, what did they use? And you know,
they used a Japanese hook.
right.
And I don't think that they distinguished between wet fly and dry fly. I have never seen a Tenkara fly tied where they distinguished between the two. Now, just because of the fact that it's a wet fly or it's a sinking fly, my gut tells me that it should probably be tied on a standard wet fly hook, which is
Right.
a little bit. And you can see that's what I'm using here. Is I've got a standard wet fly hook.
Right. Something with a little bit of bulk to it. So it'll
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I usually tie them with. Now, that having
Okay.
been said, you know, there's tradition and then there's tradition. And I do a lot of fishing with the Tenkara rod, and I do use a lot of Tenkara flies, but I also use an awful lot of not Tenkara flies. In fact, the fish I caught up on Long Pine Creek last year, I caught them on a Prince nymph. So everybody seems to think that you have to fish Japanese flies with Japanese fly rods. So that's like saying you got to fish English flies with English fly rods. So use whatever works for you. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. I think it's. I think most of the folks that fly or tie the Tenkaras tie them on wet fly hooks. So I don't even know. Can you even find a wet fly hook anymore? I mean, do they even sell them with that designation to them?
I don't think so.
Yeah, some of the Mustad do.
Do they? Okay. I was gonna say, because I know when I go to Stockard or GCO, Green Caddis Outfitters, they call them 1X Stout, I think is the same as a wet fly hook.
Yeah, I mean, normally it'll be 1X heavy or
Yeah.
2X heavy or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
But there are a lot of normally your nymph hooks, your wet fly hooks, or even probably scud hooks a lot of times are a heavier wire hook.
Yeah. I know a lot of the Tenkara's flies that I've seen are all tied on a standard straight shank hook, you know, like this here. But I also know that Jason ties quite a few of them on a nymph hook, you know, that's got that little curve to it. And I kind of like that hook too. It gives it a little bit of a different look and feel to it. So
I have a question.
yeah.
The 10 flies go hook side down so that like they're inverted, like
Not as far as I know.
I mean, when it's in the water, what does it do? It just it rests on the
Oh, it does.
tackle
It's
with the,
no,
with
it
the hook
floats. It
below
doesn't
it?
float. No, it doesn't float. It sinks.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
You
everything.
want it to, you want it to sink tail first?
Yeah, I don't. I really don't know. I've
It,
never.
would-
I've
it
never
would have to because of the leader.
Yeah, and because you're fishing a tight line. If you're using a tenkara rod with a tenkara fly, it's a tight line, and the line should never be on the water. The tippet is the only material that should be in the water, so that means that you're going to have tension on the front of the fly, and it's going to sink tail first.
Tim Flagler did a presentation once where he showed, when you tie a Prince nymph, you imagine that when you cast it out there, your Prince nymph is going to be, riding, with the shank of the hook parallel, and that's how you imagine that it's going down the stream. But when he showed it, especially if you're hanging it under a strike indicator or a dry dropper or something like that, because of the leader, that hook is going to pretty much ride straight up and down.
Yeah.
So the shank is usually vertical anyway.
Yeah, and the
Would
way
putting 3 small turns of lead on the rear of the hook improve the way it rides in the water?
Well, that if you had it on the rear of the hook, that would definitely ride
Yeah.
butt down.
yeah.
And I know there for a while, Al was doing different. He was talking a little bit about how to make a fly ride certain ways in the water by where you're putting the weight. There's some flies where they put a bead out over the eye. There's a lot of different ways to, even the materials you use. If you have something in the back of the fly that is a little bit more buoyant than the stuff in the front of the fly, then maybe you can get it to ride a little bit more horizontal.
You
But,
can get them to ride horizontal too, based on the way you've set up your leader and the weight. They call it the shot drop or something like that.
Drop shot.
Yeah, the drop shot. And I've done that. One of the things that I've done, and I haven't done it yet, reminded me just now. I haven't done this in a long time, but when we lived in Montana, I was nymph fishing with this, and we were taking a couple of very small split shot and putting it inside a section of parachute cord, tying it off on both ends so that the parachute cord was your weight, and it would be however heavy it would be how many beads or split shots or whatever you put inside, and the cord hanging at the end of the leader in a drop shot configuration tended to not hang as bad as just a round split shot crimped on the end.
Okay. Well, did you tie the did the paracord get tied on the end of your line of your leader,
Correct.
and then
Yeah,
the tippet, goes on behind that?
Yeah, what we would do is take a piece of paracord and wrap the end of it real tight with thread and glue it, drop a couple of split shot inside of it, cut that off, wrap it up tight, and that's what we would tie to the tippet.
Okay.
And I've tried several different things and it seemed to work pretty good. One of the things I got a bunch of hooks that turned out to be very poorly tempered, and I ended up cutting most of them off and slipping them down inside the one end of the shall we call it a parachute cord sock, and then would wrap it up tight with thread so I'd have a head of a hook sticking up through there. That worked really good. But I mean, I ran out of those hooks after a while, and quite frankly, the idea went by the wayside along with new ideas that came in and had to be tested out. The next thing you know, it's forgotten until just now.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. The Royal Tenkara, Royal Kaberi. And we'll just get a little bit of thread on here, and it just like, it's kind of interesting because every single tenkara fly, every single Sakasa Kebari fly starts off exactly the same way. with the forward leaning hackle. And of course, when I tie it in, you tie it with the bend facing away from the hook. So that gives you a little bit natural forward leaning. There we go. Okay. Alrighty. Now we'll just and we'll stroke the feathers forward, or the hackles, the barbules forward. And I take one wrap toward the front to position it, and then the rest of it will go behind. What that does is it gives me the shorter hackle up on the front, and as I progress toward the back, the longer hackle take over, and it kind of gives me a consistent length of hackle. And the same thing I did before. I'll just go ahead and do a little, wrap it a little bit forward here. A couple of wraps to keep these things pointed the same direction. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. Okay. I'm going to wrap it all the way to the back. And this is where my technique for tying this fly diverts from a traditional tenkara fly. Normally, the traditional tenkara, you tie your material here, and then you progress to the back, and you do your whip finish back here on the back of the fly. With this fly, I go back to the old traditional Western style. I start back here with the peacock, then I'll go to the red, and then I'll bring the peacock forward and whip finish it at the front of the fly. So I just found that to be a little bit easier to tie that way. So let me grab a couple of pieces of peacock from this sword tail I've got here from the whole tail. By the way, these I got these peacock feathers, the tail feathers, from Hobby Lobby. If you go over to, of all places, their floral department, they've got all kinds of things over there, and you can get, I think I paid $2 for about 3 of these peacock feathers. At the same time I was out there, I got a bunch of biots of different colors and size. I think I paid $5 for a whole bag. Okay. Pull this up and get rid of that excess. See if I can grab a hold of these without disturbing this camera. I got about 3 strands of peacock here, herl, that I'm working with here. And I'm going to come up about right about there. And I'm going to just tie it off. Just like that. Okay, now I'm going to do something that is probably a little unorthodox. I'm going to leave those there, and I'm going to bring my thread forward. I'm going to tie right over those herls, right over those hackles. About the same amount of distance that I had. Well, this length right here to be the same as this length right here, which will be the same as the length of the peacock going up toward the hackle. Now I'm going to go back and forth over this a couple of times. Again, I'm going to untwist my thread so I get a nice flat thread. So I get a nice smooth body. You can also do this red, if you wanted to, with floss. I think the originals were tied with floss. But this waxed flat Danville thread does a really nice job of this. Okay. I'll bring these back and I'll come back forward. All right, now let me start wrapping the peacock herl. Okay. Over. That's what I like about a rotary. I can rotate it around and get the thread out of the way so I don't clip it off and inadvertently. Okay. And then we'll just go ahead and put a couple of half hitches or a whip finish in it. And it looks like I captured some of that hackle with the whip finish. And there is a Royal Kaberi. The thing that I don't like about this fly is you get a little bit of red showing up right here. What you could probably do is color that black with a magic marker, and that might work. So, but there it is. There's the Royal Kaberi. And Bill saw me tie this one for a gentleman from Denver. He was asking me if I could tie a tenkara fly for him, and I tied this up. And I was using the hackle I used on that one, Al, was the hackle we were talking about earlier. I used a dry fly hackle on it, and it really came out looking good. So
I'll bet it did.
yeah,
I have an idea about avoiding that red space there.
yeah.
What if you took when you tie in that peacock curl, go all the way to the back of the hackle with your red thread as you're tying the peacock curl down, and then bring your thread back toward the back section of peacock curl and let it rest there. Then wrap your peacock curl toward the back.
Oh, I
then,
see. So yeah, I see what you're
then
saying.
tie
Mike.
it off in the waist area.
Yeah.
And do your whip finish in the middle there. And then you'll have peacock against the hackle. And
Yeah.
then do your whip finish in that space.
Yeah. That would work, wouldn't it?
I think that would work. You know, I was sitting here thinking of something else, and I'm going to have to figure the moves out. But I think I figured out an easier way to do that hackle, and that's by putting the head or the eye of the hook in the vise and moving it around until it's easy to tie on, and wrap it in the traditional manner, starting at the front. But I would be doing it in the direction my
Oh,
hands
okay.
feel is normal.
Okay. So in other words, and this is not a good fly to do it with, or a good hook to do it with it because it's a down eye. A straight eye would be better.
Well, a down eye is fine too. With the rotary vise, you just get twisted until you get it the way you want it. But
Something like that.
yeah,
Except, yeah. Yeah, that would work because then you could tie it in this angle right here.
yeah.
You can't, let's see.
It's going to be tough to see on screen. I've got a special vise here at home that I can move it around so you can see it.
Yeah.
But,
And then you'd wind up tying the fly in exactly the same way you normally do.
correct. Except I
That's
think
what I was
you'd
always
wanna-
wondering. I think
Yeah,
if I
what you'd
was
wanna-
to take a stab at tying a tenkara fly just for myself, I think I would start at the back lay down a thread base, just start at the back and shape the body, come forward and just tie the hackle in last, only tie it in reverse so it comes forward.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe even finish right behind the hackle.
Yeah, still tie it in because then the only problem I've seen, and I haven't tried it yet. I've thought about doing that, just tie it in the traditional way, back to front. And then when you tie your hackle in, you just kind of bring it to the front of the hook wrap your hackle around instead of going back to front or front to back, you're going back to front and then just tie it off in the front behind the eye. The problem is with that forward facing hackle, you're going to have your thread's going to be getting in the way and you could trap hackle fibers. So, which is the reason that everybody I've seen goes front to back with the hackle. But, and Al, you gave me another idea. Instead of putting the hackle on first, you can still tie it this way, but put the hackle on last. And maybe that would help a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, and the thing that I liked about doing it backwards, and Mike Kelly came up with a great idea of whip finishing in the red spot between the two peacocks.
Yeah.
And I think that if you run your whip finish right, damn, that could be awful nice. And you'd have to really scratch your head to see how in the hell the thing was ever finished off.
Yeah, you would you? I'm going to try that tomorrow.
And also try, you could use that point of the hackle that you tie in to kind of build up a little bit of a taper in your body. If you tie the hackle in all the way sticking out over the eye of the hook and go all the way to the eye with your thread, go back and finish the body and get it tapered how you want, and then go ahead and wrap the hackle back from front from the eye toward the back, and then tie it off and whip finish right behind that hackle. So the hackle will be facing forward out of your way, and then you could just whip finish right behind that hackle.
Sure.
That's just brainstorming, but
yeah. I'm gonna have to play with it a little bit. Those are all great ideas.
But we're gonna turn Tenkara upside down.
Well, before you know it, they're going to call it the American bastardization of Tenkara, and then it'll be those darn Americans again, you know. So.
Yeah, darn Americans don't know how to tie flies.
Yeah.
Americara.
Americara. Instead of calling him a Sakasa Kabari, we're going to call him a what is it you call him, Mike?
Kielbasa.
The Kielbasa Kabari, yeah.
Kielbasa.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, dear.
We're tying sausages.
Oh, my God. Things are going to heck of a handbasket here.
Yeah, I think with that, I'll stop the recording.